Why does the resurrection matter? It's easy, preferable sometimes, to make the resurrection of Christ to be a nice story, a metaphor, a figure of the pious imagination. But to do so makes the faith into a house of cards, ready to fall at the slightest breeze of bad news. Jesus told us that his church would prevail even over the gates of hell, and yet when we endeavor to make the central event of our faith the cornerstone upon which it is built, but a fanciful tale told each spring, we won't prevail over much of anything. As I mentioned last week, if love can conquer the tomb, it can conquer anything. But as Andrew McGowan, Dean of Berkeley Divinity at Yale, wrote, if Easter really meant just that love is more powerful than death, but Jesus didn't rise, how's the love-death score today? The today in question was the day that terrorist bombs killed hundreds of Christians in Sri Lanka. Later, when the president at the time took to Twitter to use Easter as an occasion to celebrate the booming economy, McGowan quipped that this is what you get when Easter is about niceness, spring, or even love, without a sense of how the resurrection disrupts our idols and fantasies. He says this empire will crumble, and if you base your contentment on its falsehoods, enjoy them while you may. A different world is coming. End quote. The cry of the poor and the oppressed goes up to the ear of God, and he responds by sending his Son, not just to suffer with us, not just to die as one of us, but to raise him from the dead. Death, the last tool of the tyrant, is defeated. Because Christ rose from the dead, we can stand up for justice. Because Christ rose from the dead, the martyrs were willing to go to their deaths. Because Christ rose from the dead, we can all rest in the assurance of our Lord that nothing we do is in vain, and even the most tragic of losses will be made right. This is no mere spring festival. This is not the religification of the annual renewal of the plants in the springtime. This is not the Christian manifestation of an older pagan observance. Christ being raised from the dead will never die again. He's not a flower in the spring that fades in the fall. He's not just one expression among many of Ovid's love conquers all. He is a person, flesh and blood, and he has been raised to give you new life with him. A few years ago, just before I went to seminary, I was asked to lead a vigil at the local gay bar in Monroe following the tragic mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Florida. The vigil was well attended. Hundreds of people turned out, and there were signs and banners and the attendees shouting, "Love wins." You might remember that phrase from when in 2015 marriage equality became the law of the land. Love wins. But what struck me at this event were those faces of those who had been gunned down, many of them my age, out for a night with friends, as I've done many times. I couldn't stop thinking about how they were here, each of them, with friends and families and jobs and lives, each of them gone, missed, because a man with a gun decided that he was the Lord of life and death. And in thinking on this, hearing and seeing love wins everywhere, I wondered, did love win for these people? It seems like the only winner that night was the gun. As Dean McGowan asked, if Christ did not get up, what is the love-death score today? If God is not the Lord of life and death, then does that mean that the gunman really was? But if he did get up, if he really did walk out of that tomb on the same feet that 3 days earlier were nailed to the cross, if he really did do all that the apostles, prophets, and martyrs say that he did, then my Lord and my God, Jesus, if you really did that, then is it also true that you did it for me? And that you did it for those people in that nightclub, those Christians in Sri Lanka, those children in that elementary school, those people in Syria or Ukraine or Iraq? Did you do it for those people in the Rose Garden? Lord, did you do it for the people sitting here? Why make that into a metaphor? Why water down the victory to a few paltry slogans? Why make Christianity boring when at its root is the most interesting thing that has ever happened? Death was reversed. He got up, and he did it for you. That seems like good news worth sharing.